Welcome to Bloomberg Television's special coverage of Artemis 2, NASA's mission to take humans back to the moon for the first time in more than 50 years. We're now inside the final couple of minutes before liftoff here at Kennedy Space Center, Florida, where the Space Launch System rocket will carry 4 astronauts, 3 American and 1 Canadian, aboard Orion, the spacecraft, on a journey around the moon and back over the course of 10 days. This is a critical test flight. It's a dress rehearsal for NASA to prove with this system that it can launch humans into deep space and bring them home, as well as the systems that eventually NASA hopes will get Americans back onto the moon's surface as soon as 2028. At liftoff, SLS is going to generate more than 8.8 million pounds of thrust, making it the most powerful human-rated rocket in operation. This is the mission. It is an accelerated timeline under a newer NASA administration. The stakes are high. The SLS developed by Boeing, the Orion capsule developed by Lockheed Martin and its space division, the launch abort system, the top of the combined entity, developed by Northrop Grumman, American companies working with NASA, many of them locally here on the Space Coast, to bring this to fruition. But it is a project that is over budget and many years behind schedule. This is a big moment. America has a focus to return to the moon for the first time since the Apollo era in the 70s, more than 50 years since that time. We've had a few delays, but we're early in what is a 2-hour launch window. It started at 6:24 Eastern Time with the countdown now on. Let's listen in.
Any holds that could come from the ground. Now, shortly after liftoff, Houston will take control of the rocket, and my colleague Gary Jordan will take over commentary.
GLS, go for ALS.
Great call out. The rocket is on its own. 4 brave explorers ready to ride the most powerful rocket NASA has ever launched. Sound suppression water is flowing.
15.
And here we go. 10, 9, 8, 7. RS-25 engines lit. 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. And liftoff. The crew of Artemis 2 now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
Good roll pitch.
Roger, roll pitch.
Houston now controlling the flight of Integrity on the Artemis 2 mission around the moon.
Integrity, AMT high.
AMT high.
On time, passing 30 seconds into the flights. Integrity passes the alternate MECO. Target milestone. Mission Control Houston seeing good performance on the 4 main engines. Space Launch System core stage. Integrity, 3 miles in altitude. Traveling more than 1,200 miles per hour. Mission elapsed time, passing 1 minute, approaching max Q.
Max Q on, Ponce de Leon.
Stan, we have you loud and clear on Ponce de Leon.
Have you the same?
Communication signal transfer confirmed as Integrity and its crew go supersonic. Approaching 90 seconds into the Artemis 2 mission. Integrity is 14 miles in altitude, 8 miles downrange, traveling more than 2,600 miles per hour. One minute 50 seconds of mission elapsed time, standing by for main engine throttle down to 85%, ahead of solid rocket booster separation expected at the 2-minute 9-second mark. We see throttle down. Confirm separation.
So we are through the T+2 minute mark of this Artemis 2 mission, with Artemis 2 successfully lifting off from Launch Complex 39B here at the Kennedy Space Center, Cape Canaveral, throttled down to 85% power. Any moment, I'm not sure of the visuals that we'll get, but the two side boosters will separate from the core, with the core continuing on the service module and then Orion on top of it into that lower Earth orbit. The other key moment at the 60-second mark, you were watching it on your screen, max Q, the moment of maximum aerodynamic pressure or stress on the vehicle. The 4 astronauts inside the Orion capsule, the crew, 3 Americans and 1 Canadian, subject to 2 to 3 Gs as they go through that lift and roll ascent process. We have a lot more to cover. There are some key milestones along the way of this special Bloomberg television coverage of Artemis 2. And I'm joined here at the Kennedy Space Center by Bloomberg's Loren Grush, Chief Space Correspondent here at Bloomberg News. Where would you like to start?
I mean, it's hard to describe what it feels like to watch one of these launches in person. You can feel the rumble in your chest, and this is one of the world's most powerful rockets, and so it really packed a punch, and you could hear the cheers of a successful launch here around the launch site. I mean, I'm sorry, I feel like I am a tad emotional just because there's nothing like seeing one of these things with your own 2 eyes.
It reflects the emotion here on the ground. Thousands of media gathered, people from across industry, hundreds, if not thousands of NASA employees, people from Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, all on site. We've just gone through the T+4 minute mark, and essentially the G-forces build up to around 4 Gs. That's the experience of these crew and astronauts. Next, what we're looking for at about the 8-minute, T+8 minute mark is the main engine cutoff. That's when the crew inside that Orion capsule are going to start feeling weightlessness, and then thereafter 8 minutes, 18 seconds, there or thereabouts, the core stage separation. Let's get back to Artemis 2, the big picture with Bloomberg's Loren Grush, our chief space correspondent. This is about returning humans to the moon for the first time in more than 50 years, but in this case, not landing on the moon.
Right. I like to call this an elaborate dress rehearsal for the moon landing that's to come. Yes, they won't be landing on the moon for this flight. They'll be slingshotting around the moon, but the point of this mission is to really test the safety and the efficacy of the SLS rocket that we just saw launch and the Orion crew capsule, which the crew is currently riding inside to orbit. And so they will be taking the Orion capsule around the moon, and that will determine if it's ready to send humans onward onto a lunar landing. But of course, we do need those lunar landers, which are currently in development from both SpaceX and Blue Origin. There's a long road to get that done, but this is a really important milestone before that moon landing can take place.
This is a 10-day mission. The first 2 days approximately are actually first spent at low Earth orbit and then higher Earth orbit. And the idea, Loren, as I understand it, is to test Orion's capabilities for future Artemis program missions. For example, manual control of the Orion capsule by the mission's pilot, its potential docking capabilities with the other players involved at a later stage. There's an almost elliptical orbit that takes place before you have that translunar injection, and I'm really hoping that you'll explain and define what translunar injection means and when it comes.
I think the best explanation I can give is that big old boost you need to get to the moon. Translunar injection is an engine burn that Orion's main engine will do the second day into flight, so tomorrow night. And if that all goes well, that will send them on course to the moon. And it's really a matter of gravity at that point. So it will send them on this slingshot course around the moon. They won't go into lunar orbit, but essentially it's kind of a dynamic dance between Earth and the moon's gravity that will then pull them around the moon and come back to Earth. So it really is a very key part of that mission. Right now, we're just waiting for them to get to orbit. There's still some steps in the way before that happens, but that will be a key moment of that mission when it comes.
And the what to come next is main engine cutoff, about T+8:06 engines cut. That's when the crew starts to feel weightlessness. At 8 minutes 18 seconds, that core stage separation where the service module combined with Orion continue in that initial phase. T+9 to T+14 minutes, then you're looking at upper stage stabilization, a stable orbit, gathering up momentum and kinetic energy and speed, and the crew entering microgravity. The numbers speak for themselves. This is a total round trip of 685,000 miles. It is 250,000 miles to the far side of the moon, 4,000 miles off the moon's surface. But there's a bigger picture, Loren Grush, and that is to, as early as 2028, land back on the moon. What comes next?
Absolutely. So, well, just one thing I want to point out, they will be traveling 4,000 miles off of the lunar surface, but because they launched today, they will be breaking the record for the farthest that any humans have traveled into space, beating the current record set by the Apollo 13 crew. So that's something that's really momentous and something that they'll get to achieve if all goes well since they launched today. But yes, you know, what comes next? Obviously, getting on the surface of the moon is the entire point. And so next they will need to develop those landers that I was talking about, the SpaceX and Blue Origin landers. SpaceX is developing its Starship rocket, that massive rocket in South Texas that has been testing periodically, and that will be their lunar lander that will potentially take humans to the surface of the moon. Blue Origin is also developing their own lander, Blue Moon, that will potentially take humans as well. And NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman has said that whichever lander is ready first, that will be the one that does the first moon landing for the Artemis program. So there is a bit of a space race between already rivals SpaceX and Blue Origin, and we'll be tracking that development along the way. But today is all about Artemis 2. No landing, but it's still an incredible moment. We haven't been to the moon in more than 50 years, so it's such an exciting day.
Here on the ground at Kennedy Space Center, we've gone past T+9 minutes. There is some latency, if I'm being honest with you, with the feed that NASA puts out and that you may see on your screen, but we've gone through main engine cutoff. We've gone to the point where the crew will now start to experience weightlessness, and then that core stage separation where the core stage of the SLS or Space Launch System separates from what is a combined Orion and service module. Service module, by the way, contributed by Europe's Space Agency. There was something that I missed at the 3-minute 30-second mark. I apologize for that. But the launch abort system, which was basically the spike at the top of the combined SLS launch stack, was jettisoned. So that is now no longer a factor. This is all about testing that this works, Loren. It is about Orion's capabilities as a spacecraft. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, NASA really likes to have redundancy and to test before we're actually doing the riskiest maneuvers, which will be landing on the moon. In fact, that's why that NASA is actually adding more tests to the Artemis program. So before Jared Isaacman came on board, the plan was for after this launch, we would have gone straight to Artemis 3, which would have been a landing on the surface of the moon. But there was a lot of criticism about going straight from this mission straight to the landing mission without as many testing missions that we needed. And so Isaacman decided, you know what, we need to add a third mission that will make Artemis 3 actually a test where we'll send a crew into low Earth orbit to dock with lunar landers, either one or both of the ones that are being developed by SpaceX and Blue Origin. And so we'll actually have another test mission after this one aimed for 2027, and that should test out the procedures that they will use to dock with landers. If that goes well and the landers are ready, and they're hopeful that they can do a moon landing in 2028, but that's a tight turnaround.
We're at T plus 11 minutes. We're at the stage where that upper stage, again, combined Orion capsule spacecraft with the service module is stabilized in its initial orbit, and the crew is in a kind of microgravity environment. I wanted to take a moment to talk about the crew. I'm not going to go through the bios extensively, but the commander, Reed Wiseman, former Navy test pilot, International Space Station veteran, former chief of the astronaut office at NASA. Victor Glover, the pilot, Navy aviator, has been to space and the Crew 1 mission with SpaceX, and will be the first black astronaut to travel the distance to lunar distance. And Christina Kirk, mission specialist, has done 328 days on ISS. Will be the first woman woman to go to the lunar distance. Finally, Jeremy Hansen of Canada, a Canadian fighter pilot and the first Canadian assigned to the lunar mission. You and I have written a lot, Loren, and spoken a lot today to the organs of government here in the United States. This is also about a race to the moon against China.
Yes, so it depends on who you ask, but one of the main reasons that lawmakers and White House officials say that we need to be going back to the moon is because China also has its eyes set on the moon. They have their own space program, and they hope to land humans on the surface of the moon by the end of the decade. And so there have been concerns raised about what that could mean if we don't get back there before them. I like to remind people that we were first, but we do want to get back there before them. And so the idea is that perhaps if China gets there first, they could maybe set up some kind of perimeter or prevent us from exploring the moon more fully than we would like. Obviously, that's an extreme hypothetical scenario, and it hasn't been tested yet, but that is the idea of why we need to get there and why there is such urgency to get back to the moon.
We're in the last couple of minutes here of this special Bloomberg television coverage of Artemis 2, NASA's first mission for humans to return to the moon and around the moon and back. There is no lunar landing. But this program, which has its origins in the Constellation program set up by the George W. Bush administration in 2005, is behind schedule and over budget. And I look at some of the documents out of NASA, Loren, $4 billion per launch, $93 billion total program costs. Talk about that side of how Artemis has gone.
Yeah, you really hit it. The origins of that rocket we just watched launch are traced back to the Constellation program. This rocket has been in development now for over a decade. So has Orion. In fact, originally the first launch of SLS and Orion was supposed to take place in 2017, and this particular launch actually was supposed to send astronauts to an asteroid. Obviously, there's been some reworking of the mission plan since then, and we've had a few years of delay in schedule, but now the moon has become the focus after President Trump signed an executive order during his first term that we should send humans back to the moon.
This is a 10-day mission, Artemis 2, taking 3 Americans and 1 Canadian to the far side of the moon and back in a slingshot figure 8. We'll continue to cover it. This has been special coverage of Artemis 2, and this is Bloomberg.